Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles,
Hello.
and we're going to talk about the tabletop apocalypse or impending doom, I guess. Gloomhaven, which is a huge indie tabletop game. They put out a message on BackerKit last night, and I got that message, and I mentioned it to you that they
Hmm.
said they don't know what they're going to do because of tariffs. It's definitely throwing a wrench into things, and we're going to talk about this. I guess it could be a Gloom and Doom Haven.
There
I
you
don't
go.
know.
Yeah, you're definitely gonna run with that because you keep saying it. So yeah.
Yeah, I am going to run with that. So let's talk about this. The tariff situation affecting board games, and a lot of people freaking out. And now as it currently stands, my understanding of the tariff situation as of this afternoon is that Trump is holding off on tariffs on every country until they renegotiate, except for China.
Hmm.
He has
But
it in for
unfortunately,
China.
10-1. This is coming from China.
Yeah, almost all the stuff comes from China.
Yeah.
So that's the big issue here is like 99% of tabletop games, board games, the pieces, the boxes, the printing, the all this stuff, the dice comes from China.
Hmm.
And the tabletop industry is kind of reeling because I'm hearing stories of people that are, and I think Gloomhaven's one of them, that they were supposed to get a huge shipment in from China, and now as soon as it comes in, they have to pay an additional 54 or 104% or whatever the hell amount it is, basically way, 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 way more than they budgeted for.
Yeah. The
And
problem is, I mean, where I can see why they're doing stuff. The problem is like smaller businesses are gonna take the huge hit.
right, right. So, and people are they're gonna get into the politics of it, and they're gonna be like, "You guys just want everything to be made in China." It's like, no, ideally, everything would be made in the U.S. Ideally, everything that China does, we could do here.
We
Un-
prefer to buy from people in the U.S.
yeah, unfortunately, we gave the capability to China decades ago, and it's going to take a while to turn everything back on. In
Yeah,
fact,
it's doable, but it's not doable overnight.
no. And I think that long term, we need to be looking at this, and the pandemic definitely should have gotten people thinking more about it because we had several months where you couldn't get anything from China.
Yeah, do you remember how bad that was? And people were
Oh,
going
that was awful.
crazy and everything else. Now it's not even just that; it's like you're going to pay more to get your stuff from China.
Yeah,
So it's going to affect a lot of stuff. Now we're hearing that books and pins and things like that, not so much, but things like this,
yeah, with
it's a
the pieces
problem.
and the
Yeah.
even the books. I talked to an American printer yesterday. I don't even know what day I'm on, but they were saying that the boards for hardcovers, actually, they're all made in China. Even if your book is technically printed in the US, if it's a hardcover, components of that book are manufactured in China because they don't have
Right.
the
So
capability to do it here.
people might just suddenly just decide to just do soft covers now because it's going to
Yeah,
take longer. It's going to be more expensive. You're having more tariffs and stuff.
yeah.
So anyway, yes.
Let's talk about this. Before you get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. You'll get a woohoo if you do.
Woohoo.
Not a lot of woohoos in the tabletop space. A lot of companies sounding the alarm. Even Reason Magazine covered it
Hmm.
because tabletop is disproportionately affected because this is where all the pieces come from. And this is somebody from Steve Jackson Games, CEO of Steve Jackson Games, saying that the challenge is that the United States simply isn't equipped to support full-scale tabletop game production. There are a few domestic shops that can handle cards or small run printing,
Right.
but once you move into complex assemblies or high volume tooling, it becomes prohibitively expensive.
Hmm.
And Gloomhaven is like a lot of figures. Like there's a lot of little pieces and a lot of little figures and very complex game. This I think the last Kickstarter they did or backer kit they did was like $5 million. Can you
And
imagine?
then they're saying that that whatever profit they made is going to be completely wiped out.
Gone, gone. Yeah. And this was last night I got it, and I mentioned it to you before the press actually started
You
covering
did.
it. And I said it's going to be a massive hit to tabletop because Gloomhaven is one of the biggest success stories out of indie tabletop, and they're even like, yeah, we might go out of business, guys, just so you know.
Yeah, this is a
So
bad thing. This is not good. And it's going to be, from my understanding, if they do have to continue with China, it's going to be in steps. But still, anybody who has to get things produced, which is most everyone, is
Yeah.
going to take hit. And all the consumers who, purchase this material, this stuff, even if you buy from American sellers or American companies, are still going to take a hit because they're going to
Yeah.
pass it on to you.
Yeah. And that's it. And that's what I was watching a video last night with, I think it was Professor DM, a couple of the tabletop guys that I watch, and they were discussing it, and the one guy was like, "Hey, there's a rule of five, I guess, with tabletop games. Basically, whatever we pay for it, we have to multiply our cost times five to get the retail cost because it hits so many other people. It hits the
Right.
distributor, and it hits the shop, and then it hits the consumer. So it has to be marked up." Considerably. He said, now my $50 game is going to cost at a minimum $80.
Well, I think what's going to have to happen too is if the stuff doesn't get settled or resolved, that
Yeah.
you might not have all those middlemen. You're not going to be able to go through distributor and everything else. You may be able to sell directly to shops, but most people are going to have to come to you to buy it because that cuts out some of the money, keeps the cost down.
I think that's what's going to happen, because what happens with distributors, and people don't realize this if you're not in the business of this, but if you do comics or games and you sell through Diamond, or well, Diamond's not really around anymore, but I'm saying, like a distributor, you're selling your product to them for half price, a little more than half price, and then they're
Hmm.
selling it to the shop, and then the shop sells it to the consumer, and everybody takes a cut as we go along. So you have to get that stuff so damn cheap. And what's going to happen now is, I think you're right. We're going to have more direct to consumer, because it's not going to make sense to be able to sell your games. You're not going to be able to sell your games to Diamond for half price or whatever. It's just
Right,
not going to
because
happen.
if you're a big company, you're still going to be able to probably do so much of it that you still can offset some of the cost.
Hasbro can
Right.
do it. Yeah.
But if you are like, these people that are doing crowdfunders, I mean, they're big relatively speaking, but they're to save money and be able to keep some profit, they're going and keep the cost down. So people are going to pick them over a Hasbro game. They're going to have to do what they can to shave off expenses. And the fastest, easiest way to do that, if this continues, is to make sure they're cut out the distributor, cut out, even the shop if they can, and sell
Yeah.
directly to consumer. And it sucks, but it is probably what they're going to have to look into.
And that's going to be kind of the trickle down effect. I think that's going to happen. I'm seeing more and more comic book publishers now, as especially with Diamond being up in the air, and comics distribution being up in the air, that they're going to direct to consumer, and they're actually selling direct to shops now too. They're basically selling to shops, for the same price that Diamond would have sold to them. But then if you're a shop owner, it's that much harder, because now you have to keep track of each individual publisher.
Right, and each individual order you have out to make sure you get it.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's true.
So this so this went out last night. The Gamer, actually, I'll give him props. Usually I don't give the Gamer props, but I'll give him props. They actually did a good write-up, and they kind of explained the whole situation here. So this is a Gloomhaven creator, Cephalo Fair CEO, addresses tariffs amidst the 104% increase in manufacturing costs. And yeah, it's considered one of the best games. They says the fourth best game of all time, according to Board Game Geek. I haven't played it, but I know it's popular. But I did get the backer update, because I actually follow them on BackerKit. So in a new post for backers, Gloomhaven Grand Festival Company CEO Price Jordan addressed the new tariffs and the impact they would have on things going forward. Speaking bluntly, our industry, our jobs, and our projects are under attack by volatile, self-inflicted U.S. trade policy. Not to get political, but actually he said, I will give him props. He said in his original update that he didn't want to get political, but he's like, you can't talk about the situation with the manufacturing costs and not get political.
Yeah, that's what I said yesterday too. It's like, I don't like to talk about stuff like that, but there's just no way to address it without, having to talk about a little bit into it.
So we said our manufacturing costs in the last 2 months have seen an increase of 104% due to U.S. tariffs. So what is going on, as I understand it, is there are people that, again, have their stuff on a boat from China. They already paid for it. They already paid the factory to make their games. And as soon as they hit the ports, they're going to have to cough up an additional, whatever, 104%.
See, I think if, they want to impose tariffs, that's fine. But if you already have stuff that's on the boat, like right now, and you could prove that, you shouldn't have to pay it on that, because it's already on its way here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But can you imagine, like, if your margins are already slim, and here comes a boat full of, here's the project you paid $200,000 to have produced, and now you have to cough up another $200,000 just to take it home.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I mean, because if they already have it on the boat, they shouldn't
Right.
have to pay the tariff because I like, anybody else would have time to, be like, oh, okay, I can't afford this and change their mind. You have it on the boat. You don't have that luxury of having time to find a solution or change your mind. So if it's
Right.
already on a boat, provably, I don't think you should have to pay it. If you haven't done it yet or it hasn't come out yet, or, that I think that I can see that. But if it's already on a boat coming over here, no.
Well, that's
Because
like
you've already done it. It's already shipped,
yeah, and there was now again, this is all happening so fast. I don't know the
It
nuts and
changes
bolts.
by the hour,
By the
honestly.
hour, right? Even by the time we post this video, it might be like a completely different
Changed, yeah.
situation. Who knows? Just from yesterday, it's changed. But as I understand it, stuff from a Temu or Shein or whatever, it was exempt because they would send it in the mail.
They do. They sent it like via the mail, yeah.
But now that's going to get tariffed too. At a different rate, but still going to get tariffed.
Yeah, and it was like a sliding scale. Like it starts out one rate, then like couple weeks later it goes another, and it just keeps going up and up.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I mean, here's the thing. I think that we need to bring back the manufacturing to the United States. I don't think that's up for debate. The problem is you need to have a time frame. You can't just be like, okay, we're doing it tomorrow, snap your fingers. It doesn't work that way. We have the places, in place, some of them, but you have to have the equipment upgraded. You have to have, people that can do it. And It's been gone for decades. And we need to bring it back, but it's not something that can be done that quickly. It should have been like, okay, year 1 this, year 2 this, year 3 this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think at this point it feels like Trump's playing chicken with the global economy, and it's like, look, the other countries, they all kind of got with the program and they're like, okay, we'll renegotiate. I mean, they're not saying tariffs are completely off the table. I don't think they're going to be off the table, but they can negotiate for a better rate. China, though, the more they stall, the more he's like, okay, fine, it's 104, fine, it's going to be 200, 300.
Like, tariffs are fine, but you have to understand, if we're paying tariffs, then they should have to pay tariffs. And people are mad about that, but it's like, it's not fair. We have to pay tariffs, and our companies have to pay tariffs to them, but they don't have to pay tariffs to us. I just think that they're taking it, they're overcorrecting too quickly. And I think that's the problem. But I also know when it comes to China, they've done some really skeezy shit in the past. Like,
Yeah.
I know there was one story they were talking about, a few years back, that this guy had a company, and I don't know if it was furniture or what, but the Chinese company, what they would do is they would deliberately sell things less than what it cost to make them over here. So they did that to run out the American companies. When the American companies closed because they couldn't compete, then they turned around and raised their prices higher than what the American companies were, and they got sanctions placed against them for doing it. So this is not surprising. This is the kind of shit they do. You've talked, I don't know if you talked on here, but you've told me about trade shows you're at with the one parts manufacturer.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and tell people about that.
So yeah, this was like 15 years ago. I was a marketing manager for a company that we did fracking components like oil and gas, and we actually had a couple of patented parts, and we were doing a trade show, and the CEO of the company said, whatever you do, if you see any groups of, obviously they're from China, Chinese folks with cameras coming to the table, get them away from these parts, because he's like, I'm going to tell you. And this guy, our CEO, actually did work in China.
I was going to say, he worked in China, so he knows.
Yeah, he knows how it goes. He's like, they're over here. They're going to try to figure out how to reverse engineer the components.
And then put you out of business.
Right.
So, I mean, when you look at it that way, it's understandable. And this is an ongoing problem that the companies have been having with them. So I can kind of understand why a lot of businesses are kind of like, yeah, what the hell? But the flip side is it trickles down to the American people, and the American people, even though they understand the bigger picture, I can't afford to pay twice as much for everything.
That's right. And that's what it's going to come down to, right? Because people, like, they can talk whatever, when they're actually faced with prices that have doubled, and like, God knows we've had enough inflation over the last couple of years, right? But when they see another big jump, and meanwhile companies are laying off, and they're just going to be like, yeah, I can't afford $100 board game.
No,
it's not
that's where it is. And then what's going to happen is these companies are going to go out of business, and except for the big companies who are just going to, Hasbro is going to phone it in even more.
Yep.
Because these indies are giving people what they want. Like the major companies, it's like Hollywood. They're not listening to you. They're not giving you what you want. These people are giving you what you want. The problem is they might go under because of this, and the other companies, the bigger companies, are probably storming, and that's a problem.
Yeah, and like you said, Hasbro's just phoning it in now, and half the people that are working on D&D. I just did a video on the gaming channel yesterday. The creative director's gone from D&D now too. Like, they don't care. They're just going to keep regurgitating the same stuff, and eventually they'll probably just crap a bunch of stuff out with AI and call it a day. License it out. And these guys, meanwhile, are busting ass trying to give you a good game, and because they're smaller, they can't absorb the cost. So this is what the CEO said. He said, "We're still analyzing the situation. It's going to take us some more time to solve it fully. We do know that this is already meaning some really hard decisions for Cephalo Fair in terms of release schedules, fulfillment timelines, project costs, staffing considerations, conventions, contracts, budgets, and more. Basically, if we have to pay twice as much for these games, oh my God." What do we, I'm like, oh my God, what will we do? 2025 has yet to provide us with a stable and known playing field for what lies ahead. It is hard to plan a journey when the price of travel keeps going up monthly, weekly, daily, without warning and without much rationale. Ultimately, we take our obligation of delivering on crowdfunding projects very seriously and have a track record of delivering, development delays aside, 100% of our projects to date. Currently, our top priority is to uphold that promise and track record by protecting your backer investment to the best of our abilities, fighting as hard as we can against obstacles, interference, and sometimes the occasional global pandemic or trade war. They're bigger, and they do sell, as far as I know, outside of Kickstarter and stuff. They can, it's gonna be a kick to the balls, but they can probably absorb it better than someone who maybe had a $50,000 or $100,000 crowdfunder.
Right.
And so I'm already seeing that a lot of smaller game companies are canceling games. They're not even going to bother because they're like, where else are we going to get these pieces manufactured? We can't do it. So there's going to be a huge culling, I think, in the tabletop space.
I think this is a prime opportunity if anybody here has the skill set to do something like manufacturing the parts.
Yeah.
You have to still get the materials, but I'm just saying, if you have the skill set to do it, now's your time.
Yeah. Now is definitely the time. And most of the stuff used to be done here. That's the thing, I told people before, like Atari early on, we built the Atari, not we,
you were personally there. You put the parts together.
But like so much of stuff was actually made in the US, and then it was cheaper to outsource, and then it became the norm to outsource, and then it became more cost prohibitive.
When laws changed to allow it to be easier for companies to get away with it and to make it cheaper, then they took advantage of it and they put the screws to the American people. And that's why the Rust Belt, like you said to me the other day, the Rust Belt's called the Rust Belt for a reason. Like, it was all the manufacturing.
Can't just turn it back on.
And you can't turn it back on. They all got left for decades. The corporations got to go wherever it was cheapest. And, eventually we just got used to it, because it's funny, because toys back in the 80s and some levels are about the same price as they are now, except in the 80s that $8 toy was significantly more expensive in our money. You pay $8 for the same toy, but the reason you are is because the manufacturers went someplace cheaper.
Right. And that's it. And you can feel it, like we're talking about Hasbro. You can feel it with the Hasbro products, like the Transformers are way cheaper than they used to be, and they cost twice as much, but now God only knows how much they're going to cost, it's, but they're making more of the stuff. Now they're trying to work out deals with like Vietnam. But that was another thing too. Like, we talked about this, especially with Mattel. Like, there were variations on He-Man and She-Ra figures based on
Milo
the factory.
Ponies also, but that was Hasbro.
Yeah. Based on the factory they were made in. So some of them were made in Taiwan, some of them were made in Malaysia, Japan, the Philippines, Mexico, whatever.
I remember.
Yeah. So, we used to send to other countries, but then China just became the best deal in town, and they had all the technology and everything. And
I remember being a kid, and I was like, wait, this wasn't made by Santa? What the hell?
No, Santa relocated to China because of the tax breaks. That's what happened.
So anyway, I see both sides of it. It's a bad situation for smaller companies and a bad situation for consumers at this point in time, unless something changes. Hopefully it doesn't come to it's like you say, he's playing chicken, and hopefully they don't call the bluff. Hopefully it comes to the place where they can just find a mutual agreement, not a mutually assured destruction. So we'll see what happens.
Well, it's interesting, just to go back to his backer kit update. and he's showing the factories, and apparently he actually goes, because they produce so much, he actually goes to China and kind of oversees,
Okay.
which is cool. You know, he gets to see where the stuff's made. But he said, yeah, it's a problem because he said domestic manufacturing does not exist for the products we make. This is what I'm trying to get through to people, because I mentioned it the other day and I got blasted. Everybody's like, well, it's no big deal. You just make it here in the US. I'm like, some things you can't. You literally
Ideally,
cannot.
yeah. Like I know for a fact, talking to the book people, they cannot get the boards are only
No.
available from China.
Yes.
So it's
And
not like anybody's just doing it to be a jerk. It's just you cannot get them here. So you need people to come to start a company that does the same things here, but it's going to take longer than just like a month to do that.
right, right. That's it. Like I think that this is the alarm being sounded, that we need more companies here that manufacture, you know, specialty projects. If there's even money to be made in it, because it might be that, you know, China does it so cheaply, and it's such a niche thing. These tabletop games are such a niche thing that it really wouldn't benefit somebody to go into the tabletop board game manufacturing business, right? Because most of the companies that do any parts or any tabletop games, whatever, over here, they also do other stuff. It's a printer that just happens to do cards, just happens to do, you know, the boards for the board games, because they can print on anything, but they also do a bunch of other stuff too that probably pays more.
Well, I'm just saying now, if you were already having the skill set or you had the inclination, now's the time,
There we
to do this
go.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. And like I said, changes daily. By the time this video goes up, who the hell knows? Yeah, this whole thing could be resolved and it's just a false alarm. But right now, there's a lot of freaking out. And if I were in their situation, I definitely.
They might want to consider like talking, not just them, just in general, people talking to local manufacturers of certain things that they might not make it now, but they might have the ability to make it. They just haven't thought of it. And the reason I'm saying that is because we used to get all our printing done, we still do, from a place that's local, and that was quality was much higher. It was better stuff, way cheaper, because they just, they had the ability to do it. They just didn't think to do it. So then when you'd say, can you do this? They'd be like, yes, we can. And they give you a better product that was local, but no one had asked them before. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because it's kind of like, I mean, printing is printing, right? I mean, if you go somewhere and you're like, yeah. So the story. Can I say the story?
Yeah, go ahead and say the story. Print Ninja.
All right. So here's the story behind Print Ninja. They do all kinds of comics and board games, and you're welcome.
Yeah.
We were actually the very first comic books that they had printed. And I'll tell you what happened. What happened was I saw that they had ridiculously good price. Again, they're out of China, they're a broker for China, but this was like 15 years ago. And I saw they had really good prices for like catalog printing and magazine printing. And I'm like, because there weren't a lot of options for comic books, right? You had to go to Canada, which was expensive, or you had to go, there's another overseas printer and they were very expensive too, because, they had it locked down. So I'm like, hey, have you thought about doing comic books and graphic novels? And I told them all about Kickstarter, and I told them I had like a 2-hour conversation.
You walked them through like all the paperweights, the sizes, what you have to ask for from China, and everything.
Yeah, and we wound up being the first graphic novel that they printed, the original version of Shadowbinders from 12 years ago, and we did some promotion for them. And yeah, so you're welcome.
You're the Adam and Eve of
and now the people that were there like forgot who we were. I was like, wait a minute.
Well, a lot of them weren't there then. Yeah,
they weren't.
But
we
are the very first comic books that they did, and that was because thinking outside the box. Neon asked them, "Hey, could you do this?" So
well, I used to work for a commercial printer. So
right, that's my point. I'm like, people are automatically assuming they have to go to China, but you might not have to if you just like ask around. There might be something that people could just do, like, well, yeah, we probably could do that. We hadn't thought of it before, I didn't know there was a demand for it. And they might inadvertently be able to get stuff made over here easier than they thought they could. I'm just saying, I'm putting it out there. Well, it's a universe and seeing if it helps.
That happened with we watched the toys that build America, and we watched the food that build America, and the this that build America, and the that build America.
We know everything about how America was built. No,
right. And they had an episode talking about board games, and they had an episode talking about Trivial Pursuit, and that's how they did Trivial Pursuit. They actually had the components made at different factories, and then they put them together in the guy's garage. But it was so cost prohibitive. But that's how they got the first games done. Is they had like this made over here and that made over here, and then we put it together in a box. Boom, there it is.
Yeah, I'm just saying there might be other ways around it. I mean, that's like down the road. But if you just look or ask or look around, you might be able to find a solution, and it might be helpful. It doesn't really to help these guys right now, but I'm just saying in general.
Right, in general. So there we go. Hopefully it's not Armageddon for tabletop, but it's not looking too good as of recording this video today.
That might be different in 5 hours. We'll see.
It could be different in 5 hours. So we're going to wrap this up.
Yep.
Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We'll talk later.
Bye.